Clara Scoth spent 3 years bleeding for her career at New York's most ruthless law firm. But her untouchable world violently shatters when a mysterious billionaire buys the company and completely guts her career on day one. Furious, Clara storms into the executive suite, ready to fight for the job she sacrificed everything for. But the words die in her throat the moment she sees the man sitting behind the polished mahogany desk. He isn't just her new boss. He is the devastatingly handsome stranger she secretly married in a neon-lit Las Vegas chapel 6 years ago, the husband she abandoned before sunrise. She demands an annulment, desperate to erase the mistake. But Marcus Croft didn't buy a $70 million law firm just to let her run away again. Trapping her in a transparent glass office right next to his, he delivers a chilling ultimatum. She belongs to him from 9 to 5. And if she wants to keep her career, she is going to have to prove exactly how good of a partner she can be. Prepare for the ultimate corporate trap. Episode 6, The Emperor's Suite. The elevator ride to the top floor of the Neon Mirage took exactly 42 seconds. For Clara Scoth, it felt like a slow descent into hell, despite the fact that they were traveling upwards. The gold-plated doors slid shut, sealing her in a mirrored, 6x6 box with the man she had spent 6 years trying to forget. Marcus stood casually leaning against the brass railing, watching the floor numbers climb on the digital display. The suffocating, manufactured chill of the casino air conditioning did nothing to cool the violent heat radiating off Clara's skin. "I am not sharing a room with you," Clara said, her voice a lethal, vibrating hiss. She kept her eyes fixed firmly on the brass doors. "You are sharing a suite, Clara," Marcus corrected smoothly, not looking away from her reflection in the mirrored doors. "And given that you successfully negotiated a 400-page corporate merger last month without raising your voice, I am confident you can survive sharing 2,000 square feet of neutral territory. This hotel is not neutral territory, and you know it." Clara snapped, finally turning to face him. Her professional composure was fracturing by the second. "You booked the exact hotel the hotel where we got married," Marcus finished for her, his voice dropping into a dark, unapologetic octave. He stepped away from the railing, moving into her space until she was forced to look up at him. "Say the word, Clara. It is a legal fact. You are a lawyer. You shouldn't be so afraid of the truth." "I am not afraid," Clara lied, her heart hammering wildly against her ribs. "I am furious. You are deliberately weaponizing my past to destabilize me before the biggest negotiation of my career." Marcus reached out, his knuckles brushing the tense line of her shoulder. "I don't need to weaponize the past to destabilize you. I just need to stand exactly this close." The elevator gave a soft ping. The doors slid open, cutting the tension like a guillotine. Marcus stepped back, adjusting his suit jacket with infuriating calm. "After you, Miss Scoth." Clara marched out of the elevator, her heels sinking into the obscenely plush, crimson carpet of the penthouse corridor. The valet had already dropped their bags inside the room and vanished. The heavy, double mahogany doors of the Emperor's suite stood slightly ajar. Clara pushed them open. Her breath hitched, and she stopped dead in the entryway. The suite was a sprawling, multi-million-dollar monument to Vegas excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying, panoramic view of the neon-soaked strip. There was a sunken living room, a marble-wet bar fully stocked with top-shelf liquor, and a massive, modern fireplace. But it was the bedroom that made Clara's blood run cold. There were no walls separating the sleeping quarters from the main living space. It was an open-concept layout. And directly in the center of the raised platform, framed by sheer silk curtains and bathed in the flashing neon glow of the city outside, was a single, massive, California king bed. "You've got to be kidding me," Clara whispered. Marcus walked past her, dropping his leather briefcase onto the glass dining table. He surveyed the room, his expression completely unreadable. "I will call the front desk," Clara said, already reaching into her purse for her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. I will book my own room. I don't care if I have to pay for it out of my own pocket. I am not sleeping in this open-concept psychological trap. Put the phone away, Clara. The command wasn't shouted. It was delivered with the absolute, quiet authority of a man who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. Clara froze, her thumb hovering over the screen. "Excuse me?" Marcus turned around. The corporate chill was gone. The predator she had seen across the table at dinner last night was back. "I told you on the tarmac," Marcus said, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her. "Chloe Dean owns this hotel. She orchestrated this. She placed us in her secondary property, and she specifically upgraded us to the Emperor's Suite because she wants to see how the unattached CEO and his fiercely protective female lead counsel behave behind closed doors." Clara swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "It means," Marcus murmured, stopping mere inches from her, "that Chloe is paranoid. She doesn't trust anyone. She wants to know if I am sleeping with my lawyers, or if I am truly single and available to be her next corporate husband." He reached out and gently plucked the phone from Clara's rigid fingers, tossing it onto the plush sofa. "If you march down to the lobby and demand a separate room," Marcus continued, his dark eyes burning into hers, "Chloe's staff will report it to her in 5 minutes. She will immediately know there is a fracture in our dynamic. She will smell blood, Clara. She will tear the Dean Enterprise acquisition apart just for the sport of it." Clara stared at him, her legal mind racing, frantically searching for a loophole. But the terrifying truth was, he was right. In high-stakes acquisitions, optics were everything. A sudden, volatile split between the CEO and his lead counsel on the first night of the audit would trigger every alarm bell in Chloe Dean's paranoid head. "So, what is your grand strategy?" Clara asked, her voice trembling slightly. She hated how small she sounded. "We just play house? I draft non-disclosure agreements at the wet bar while you sleep in that bed." "My strategy," Marcus said softly, his gaze dropping to her lips, "is that we survive the next 14 days without committing homicide. You get the bed. I will take the couch." Clara blinked, genuinely shocked. She looked at the modern, low-profile leather sofa in the sunken living room. It looked incredibly expensive and incredibly uncomfortable for a man who was 6'2". "You're giving me the bed?" A dark, amused smirk played on Marcus's lips. "Don't look so relieved, wife. It's simply a tactical decision. If you don't sleep, you make mistakes in the paperwork. And I cannot afford mistakes on a $2 billion deal." He turned away from her, walking toward the wet bar. He picked up a crystal decanter and poured a measure of amber scotch. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. For a fraction of a second, she felt a dangerous, terrifying flicker of the man she had met 6 years ago, the man who had been charming, protective, and intoxicatingly reckless. She immediately crushed the thought. "He is holding your career hostage," she reminded herself fiercely. "He is the enemy." She picked up her briefcase, marching toward the glass dining table to set up her laptop. She needed the familiar, sterile glow of a spreadsheet. She needed to bury herself in the Dean Enterprise liabilities before she did something stupid, like look at him again. "I am going to begin drafting the union severance clauses," Clara announced, strictly professional, pulling out her laptop. "I need you to review the—" 3 sharp knocks at the heavy mahogany door echoed through the suite. Clara froze. She looked at her watch. It was 11:45 p.m. Marcus set his scotch glass down. The amusement vanished from his face, instantly replaced by a razor-sharp, corporate mask. He looked at Clara, pressing a single finger to his lips, demanding silence. He walked silently to the door and pulled it open. Chloe Dean stood in the hallway. She wasn't wearing a business suit. She was wearing a completely sheer, black lace robe over a silk slip, holding a silver ice bucket containing a bottle of Dom Perignon. She looked past Marcus's shoulder, her amber eyes scanning the penthouse, locking directly onto Clara. Chloe's lips curved into a slow, predatory smile. "Marcus, darling," Chloe purred, stepping directly into the suite without an invitation. I hope I'm not interrupting a strategy session. I just realized I haven't officially welcomed you to Vegas. And I thought, maybe you and your lawyer needed some help unwinding. And that's the end of episode 6. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments below. Your feedback helps us know you're watching and encourages us to keep bringing you more content. See you in the next episode. Episode 7, The Interrogation. The silence in the Emperor's suite shattered the moment Chloe Dean's stiletto heels hit the marble entryway. The heiress walked into the room with the absolute entitlement of a woman who owned the building. The sheer black lace of her robe left absolutely nothing to the imagination, the silk slip underneath clinging to her like a second skin. The heavy, sweet scent of gardenias and expensive champagne immediately overpowered the clean, masculine cedar of Marcus's cologne. Clara remained frozen at the glass dining table, her fingers suspended over the keyboard of her laptop. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised, and he certainly didn't look flustered. He simply stood by the open mahogany door, his hands slipping casually into his suit pockets as he watched Chloe glide into his personal space. Dom Perignon, 2012, Chloe purred, setting the silver ice bucket down on the glass table, completely ignoring Clara's open laptop. She pulled the dark green bottle out of the ice, her manicured nails tapping against the glass. I find that the best corporate strategies are usually finalized after midnight. Don't you agree, Marcus? I find that the best corporate strategies are finalized when all parties have a clear head, Chloe, Marcus replied. His voice was a smooth, frictionless velvet that betrayed nothing. He closed the heavy suite door. The metallic click of the lock dropping into place sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Chloe turned to him, her amber eyes gleaming. She took a slow step toward him, trailing a hand along the back of the plush leather sofa. You work too hard. My father warned me you were a machine. But even machines need to power down. She finally turned her head, acknowledging Clara for the first time. Her smile was sharp, dismissive, and entirely predatory. Miss Scoth, Chloe said lightly. You must be exhausted. You've been drafting paperwork all day. You can leave us now. I'm sure you have your own room to get back to. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. The trap had been sprung. Chloe was testing the fracture lines. If Clara packed up her laptop and walked out that door, Chloe would know they were sleeping in separate rooms. She would know the united front was a lie. Clara slowly lowered her hands from the keyboard. She forced her spine straight, drawing on every ounce of her courtroom discipline. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked dead into the heiress's amber eyes. I appreciate your concern for my schedule, Miss Dean, Clara said, her voice dropping to a glacial chill that instantly lowered the temperature of the room. But Mr. Croft's legal team operates on his clock. And we are currently in the middle of restructuring your union severance liabilities. It is highly classified firm business. Chloe's smile tightened. She didn't like being told no. Especially not by another woman. The union liabilities can wait until sunrise. I brought champagne for the CEO. The CEO, Marcus interrupted, his dark timbre vibrating through the room, is currently busy. Chloe froze. Marcus walked slowly across the sunken living room. He didn't stop in front of Chloe. He bypassed her completely, walking straight to the glass dining table where Clara was sitting. He stopped directly behind Clara's chair. Clara stopped breathing as she felt the heavy, intoxicating warmth of his body radiating against her back. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus placed his hands on the back of her chair, leaning forward until his chest brushed against her shoulders. He was framing her, claiming the space. Miss Scoth is entirely correct, Marcus murmured, his eyes locking onto Chloe's over the top of Clara's head. She is a notoriously demanding lead counsel. She requires my undivided attention until this draft is perfect. I am afraid our late-night strategy sessions are strictly internal, Chloe. Chloe stared at them. The sheer lace robe suddenly looked less like a seduction and more like a tactical error. Her eyes started from Marcus's commanding posture to Clara's rigid, unyielding silence. She was looking for a crack, a sign of weakness. "Is she always this territorial, Marcus?" Chloe asked, her voice losing its purr, replaced by a dangerous edge. "Or do you just let your lawyers dictate who you entertain?" "I don't let anyone dictate my actions," Marcus replied smoothly, his thumbs lightly grazing the fabric of Clara's blazer, a subtle, punishing reminder of the control he held over her. "But I do protect my investments. And right now, my primary investment is the flawless execution of this merger. Miss Scoth ensures that happens." Clara tilted her chin up, finally delivering the kill shot. "If there are specific clauses you would like to dispute, Ms. Dean, we can schedule a formal review at 9 a.m. in the boardroom. Until then, I must ask that you allow us to maintain client confidentiality." Chloe's jaw clenched. She had been outmaneuvered, effectively dismissed by a lawyer, while the billionaire she wanted stood as backup. "Fine," Chloe said sharply. She didn't bother picking up the champagne. She pulled her lace robe tighter around her waist and marched toward the door. 9 a.m., Marcus. Don't be late. I prefer my men punctual." She yanked the heavy door open and slammed it shut behind her. The silence that rushed back into the suite was deafening. Clara sat perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then, the adrenaline crashed. Her hands began to shake violently. She shoved her chair back, the metal legs scraping harshly against the marble floor, completely escaping the cage of Marcus's arms. She spun around to face him, her eyes blazing. "Do not ever use me as a shield like that again," Clara hissed, her chest heaving. "She practically walked in here naked. You want to sleep with the client to secure the deal? Fine. Do it on your own time. But do not drag me into your twisted, manipulative games." Marcus didn't move. He stood by the table, his dark eyes tracking the frantic, furious rise and fall of her chest. "I didn't use you as a shield, Clara," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper. "I used you as a boundary. You provoked her." Clara yelled, abandoning her professional facade entirely. "You practically told her I was the reason you wouldn't touch her. You are deliberately trying to make her suspicious of our relationship." "Our relationship?" Marcus echoed, taking a slow, deliberate step toward her. The corporate CEO was gone. This was the man who had bought a $70 million law firm just to hunt her down. "We don't have a relationship, Clara. We have a marriage. A piece of paper." Clara shot back, backing up until her spine hit the edge of the marble wet bar. "A dormant liability. That is all we are." Marcus crossed the room in 3 long strides, completely invading her space. He planted one hand on the marble counter next to her hip, trapping her. He leaned down, his face inches from hers, the scent of cedar and scotch consuming her completely. "If it is just a piece of paper," Marcus growled, his dark eyes dropping to her trembling lips, "then why were your eyes burning a hole through her the second she walked in? Why did your pulse skyrocket when she touched my arm?" "I was protecting the firm's interests." Clara lied, her voice breathless, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "You were jealous," Marcus whispered, his thumb lifting to trace the frantic pulse at the base of her throat. Clara shuddered at the contact, a violent, electric shock tearing through her nervous system. "I hate you." "Good," Marcus murmured, his gaze holding hers with a terrifying, possessive heat. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "Hate me all you want, Clara. Fight me in the boardroom. Draft every contract. But do not ever think I am going to let another woman into my bed when my wife is sleeping in the next room." And that's the end of episode 7. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments below. Your feedback helps us know you're watching and encourages us to keep bringing you more content. See you in the next episode. Episode 8, The Ultimatum. The words hung in the heavy, gardenia-choked air of the penthouse. "But do not ever think I am going to let another woman into my bed when my wife is sleeping in the next room." Clara's breath hitched, the sound loud in the dead silence of the suite. She was pinned between the cold marble of the wet bar and the blistering heat of Marcus's body. His dark eyes were locked onto hers, burning with a raw, territorial possession that stripped away every ounce of his polished corporate armor. For one agonizing second, Clara wanted to lean into him. She wanted to grab the lapels of his immaculate suit and kiss him just to break the impossible, suffocating tension. The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water. She shoved both hands against his chest. It was like pushing against solid granite, but Marcus voluntarily took a half step back, allowing her to slip out from under his arm. "I am going to sleep," Clara said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. She didn't look back at him as she power-walked toward the raised platform of the bedroom. "I have a $2 billion merger to save at 9 in the morning. And you have a couch to sleep on." "Good night, Clara," Marcus murmured, the dark amusement returning to his voice. Clara didn't sleep. She lay rigidly in the center of the massive California king bed, staring at the ceiling. The sheer silk curtains did nothing to block the neon glow of the Las Vegas Strip bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. But worse than the lights was the sound. The penthouse was too quiet. Every time Marcus shifted on the leather sofa in the sunken living room, she heard the faint creak of the material. Every breath he took felt like it was echoing in her own chest. She was hyper-aware of his presence, entirely consumed by the fact that the man who legally owned her name was sleeping less than 50 feet away. By 6 a.m., Clara gave up. She slipped out of bed, exhausted but wired with nervous energy, and walked into the massive, open-concept marble bathroom. She needed a shower to wash away the memory of his hands on her chair. She needed her professional armor. When she finally emerged at 7:30 a.m., wearing a tailored, razor-sharp navy blue suit and her hair pinned into a flawless, unyielding twist, Marcus was already awake. He was standing by the glass dining table, dressed in a fresh charcoal suit, reviewing the severance documents she had drafted the night before. A silver room service cart sat next to him, stocked with black coffee and pastries. He didn't look tired. He looked lethal. "Drink," Marcus ordered without looking up, sliding a steaming cup of black coffee across the glass table. Clara took it, her fingers brushing the warm porcelain. "Did you find any errors in my draft?" "Your legal work is flawless, as always," Marcus replied, finally lifting his gaze to meet hers. His eyes did a slow, approving sweep of her severe business suit. "But we are not going to need the severance drafts today. Chloe is not going to negotiate terms this morning." Clara frowned, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "What do you mean?" "We set the agenda for 9 a.m. Chloe Dean was publicly rejected by a man in front of another woman, Marcus stated plainly, slipping the documents back into his leather briefcase. "Heiresses do not handle rejection well. She is going to retaliate. Prepare yourself for a bloodbath." At exactly 8:55 a.m., the black Escalade pulled up to the temporary executive offices of Dean Enterprise, located in a sleek, glass-and-steel high-rise just off the Strip. The ride up the elevator was completely silent. Clara stood shoulder to shoulder with Marcus, her briefcase gripped tightly in her hand. The line separating the terrified runaway wife from the ruthless corporate lawyer had completely blurred. They were walking into a war zone, and for the first time in 6 years, they were fighting on the same side. The Dean Enterprise boardroom was a cavernous space overlooking the desert mountains. Chloe Dean was already seated at the head of the massive obsidian table. She wasn't wearing sheer lace today. She wore a stark white, impeccably tailored suit that made her look like an executioner. Flanking her were 3 older men in gray suits, her senior legal team. "Marcus," Chloe said coldly, offering no smile as they entered the room. "Have a seat. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I am not in a generous mood today." "Good morning, Chloe," Marcus replied smoothly. He pulled out a chair for Clara, a deliberate, gentlemanly gesture that made Chloe's amber eyes narrow, before taking the seat beside her. "Miss Scoth has prepared the initial restructuring parameters for the Solstice Union liabilities." Clara unlatched her briefcase, the sharp click echoing in the tense room. She pulled out the leather-bound dossiers and slid them across the sleek black table. Chloe didn't even look at the files. She let them sit there untouched. "I am not interested in your restructuring parameters," Chloe said, leaning back in her chair and steepling her fingers. "After our illuminating conversation last night, I had my team do a deep dive into the internal structure of Sterling and Vance." Clara's pulse spiked. She forced her face to remain a mask of pure, emotionless stone. "And what did your team find, Chloe?" Marcus asked, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "I found that Miss Scoth's rapid ascent to lead counsel on this acquisition is highly irregular." Chloe purred, her eyes shifting to Clara with absolute venom. She was pulled off a massive litigation case 48 hours ago. She has zero experience in hospitality mergers. And yet, she is sitting in my boardroom, acting as the sole gatekeeper to my $2 billion empire. "Miss Scoth is the sharpest legal mind in my firm," Marcus stated, his tone leaving absolutely no room for debate. "Her presence here is non-negotiable." "Everything is negotiable, Marcus," Chloe snapped, dropping the polite facade. She leaned forward, planting her hands on the table. "I don't trust her. She is territorial, she is aggressive, and frankly, I suspect there is a massive conflict of interest clouding her judgment when it comes to you." The air in the boardroom turned to ice. Clara's heart stopped. Conflict of interest. Had Chloe found the marriage certificate? Had her team actually managed to unearth a 6-year-old Vegas chapel record in less than 8 hours? "Watch your next words very carefully, Chloe," Marcus warned, the temperature in the room plummeting. The 3 gray-suited lawyers beside Chloe visibly shifted in their seats under the weight of his glare. "I don't need to watch my words," Chloe smiled fiercely. "I am the client. I hold the assets. And I have decided that I refuse to hand over my family's legacy to a woman who clearly has a personal vendetta disguised as corporate strategy." Chloe reached out and pushed Clara's meticulously drafted dossiers back across the table. They slid until they hit Clara's hands. "Here is my new condition for the merger, Marcus," Chloe announced, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "I will sign the initial acquisition papers today. I will hand you the keys to Dean Enterprise." Chloe paused, her amber eyes flashing with vindictive triumph. "But you have to fire Clara Scoth. Right now. In front of me." Clara stopped breathing. The floor of the boardroom felt like it was giving way beneath her chair. "Fire her," Chloe repeated, her gaze locked on Marcus. "Remove her from this deal, remove her from your firm, and send her back to New York on a commercial flight. If you do that, we close the deal. If you refuse, I walk away and Sterling and Vance loses the biggest acquisition in its history." Silence consumed the room. It was the ultimate trap. Chloe wasn't just testing Marcus's limits. She was forcing him to choose between his $70 million corporate ambition and the wife he was holding hostage. Clara slowly turned her head to look at Marcus. His face was completely unreadable. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle ticked beneath his skin, and his dark eyes were fixed dead on the heiress. He had spent 3 years calculating his hostile takeover of Sterling and Vance just to corner Clara. But $2 billion was $2 billion. "Well, Marcus," Chloe challenged, leaning back with a victorious smirk. "Is this lawyer really worth blowing a multi-billion-dollar empire?" And that's the end of episode 8. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments below. Your feedback helps us know you're watching and encourages us to keep bringing you more content. See you in the next episode. Episode 9, The Walkaway. The silence in the Dean Enterprise boardroom was absolute. It was the kind of suffocating, vacuum-sealed quiet that usually preceded a corporate slaughter. Chloe Dean leaned back in her chair, her amber eyes practically glowing with triumph. She had laid the perfect trap. $2 billion in assets, her family's entire legacy, served on a silver platter. All Marcus Croft had to do was cut the throat of the woman sitting next to him. Clara's lungs burned. She couldn't draw a breath. She looked at Marcus. The man who had orchestrated a hostile takeover of her $70 million law firm just to corner her. The man who had demanded her absolute submission. This was his out. He could fire her, enforce her non-compete clause, ruin her career, and walk away with the largest hospitality empire in the country. It was the ultimate, flawless revenge for Vegas. Marcus stared at Chloe. His face was carved from granite. He didn't blink. He didn't look at Clara. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus reached across the sleek obsidian table. He placed his hand flat over the meticulously drafted dossiers Clara had prepared. Then, he stood up. "You misunderstand the dynamic of this acquisition," Chloe, Marcus said. His voice was not loud, but it was a dark, terrifying timbre that rattled the heavy crystal water glasses on the table. "You seem to believe you are doing me a favor." Chloe's triumphant smirk faltered slightly. "I am handing you my empire, Marcus." "You're handing me a bleeding asset," Marcus corrected, his tone dropping to absolute zero. "Your flagship casino is riddled with union disputes. Your secondary properties are hemorrhaging cash. Sterling and Vance is not here to rescue your bruised ego. We are here to salvage your father's legacy before you drive it completely into the ground." The three gray-suited lawyers flanking Chloe visibly flinched. Chloe's face flushed a furious, mottled red. "Excuse me," Chloe snapped, standing up, planting her hands flat on the table. "You cannot talk to me like that. I am the client." "You were the client," Marcus replied smoothly. He picked up Clara's dossiers and slid them effortlessly into his leather briefcase. The snap of the brass locks echoed like a gavel strike. "But I do not negotiate with terrorists. And I certainly do not fire my lead counsel because she refused to let you into my hotel room at midnight." The gasp that left the senior lawyer across the table was audible. Chloe's mouth dropped open, her furious facade completely shattering at the public exposure of her midnight stunt. Marcus finally turned to Clara. "Miss Scoth," Marcus commanded, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her blood catch fire. "Pack your briefcase." Clara was entirely paralyzed. Her legal mind, usually capable of processing thousands of pages of data a minute, had completely short-circuited. He was walking away. He was actually throwing away a $2 billion deal for her. "Clara," Marcus said, softer this time, but laced with absolute authority. "We are leaving." The sound of her name snapped her back to reality. Her hands shook violently as she grabbed her laptop, shoving it into her bag. She snapped her own briefcase shut and stood up, her knees trembling beneath her tailored navy skirt. "If you walk out that door, Marcus," Chloe shrieked, all pretense of corporate elegance gone, "this deal is dead. I will call your board. I will tell them you blew the biggest acquisition in history over a mid-level lawyer." "Call them," Marcus threw over his shoulder, not even pausing his stride as he walked toward the heavy glass doors of the boardroom. "Tell them exactly why I left." He pushed the door open, holding it for Clara. Clara marched out of the room, her spine rigid, refusing to look back at the furious heiress. They bypassed the lavish reception area entirely, walking in dead silence until Marcus slammed his hand against the elevator call button. The steel doors opened immediately. They stepped inside, and Marcus hit the button for the lobby garage. The doors slid shut. The elevator dropped. They were alone. The adrenaline in Clara's veins finally mutated from terror into pure, unadulterated shock. She dropped her briefcase. It hit the floor of the elevator with a heavy thud, but she didn't care. She turned to him, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with frantic disbelief. "Are you insane?" Clara whispered, her voice cracking. "Marcus, $2 billion. You just killed a $2 billion merger." Marcus didn't look at her. He stared straight ahead at the stainless steel doors, his jaw locked, his chest rising and falling with heavy, controlled breaths. "I told you I evaluate the risks," Marcus said tightly. "There was no risk." Clara yelled, the sound echoing violently in the small metal box. "It was a guaranteed signature. All you had to do was fire me. Why didn't you do it? You hate me." You bought my firm to ruin my life. So why didn't you let her put me on that plane? Marcus's control finally snapped. He moved faster than Clara could process. In one violent surge of motion, he crossed the elevator, his hands slamming into the steel wall on either side of her head. He trapped her instantly, his massive frame caging her in. Clara gasped, her back hitting the cold metal. You think I bought your firm to ruin your life? Marcus growled, leaning down until his lips were a fraction of an inch from hers. The scent of cedar and pure, raw aggression completely suffocated her. You think I spent 3 years tracking you down, buying out your senior partners, and meticulously tearing away every escape route you had, just to let another woman put you on a commercial flight away from me? Clara's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might shatter them. She stared into his dark, burning eyes, terrified by the sheer, possessive magnitude of what she saw there. I don't understand, Clara breathed, completely stripped of her professional armor. Marcus lowered his head, his nose brushing hers. A tremor ran through his arms where they braced against the wall. I didn't bring you to Vegas to punish you, Clara, Marcus whispered, his voice a hoarse, desperate sound that belonged in the dark, not a corporate elevator. I brought you here because 6 years ago you walked out of my bed and vanished. And I promised myself the next time I got you in this city, I was never going to let you leave. And that's the end of episode 9. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments below. Your feedback helps us know you're watching and encourages us to keep bringing you more content. See you in the next episode. Episode 10, The Breach of Contract. The elevator plunged toward the subterranean garage, but the true freefall was happening inside Clara's chest. I promised myself the next time I got you in this city, I was never going to let you leave. The words echoed in the small steel box, vibrating against Clara's skin. Marcus was leaning over her, his hands still planted on the wall on either side of her head, his chest rising and falling with a ragged, uncorporate rhythm. The polished, untouchable billionaire was gone. The man staring down at her was raw, territorial, and completely untethered. Clara's legal mind scrambled for a defense, a loophole, a rational argument to push him away. But she had nothing. For 3 years, she had convinced herself he was a drunken mistake. But a mistake didn't spend millions of dollars to buy a law firm just to keep you from boarding a commercial flight. Ding! The elevator hit the parking level. The heavy steel doors slid open, breaking the suffocating vacuum of the cabin. The dry, dusty heat of the Las Vegas garage flooded in. The spell shattered. Clara ducked under Marcus's arm, her heels clicking frantically on the concrete as she bolted out of the elevator. She didn't run, but her aggressive power walk was fueled by pure, unadulterated panic. Clara! Marcus's voice cracked like a whip behind her. Do not speak to me, Clara shot back, her voice trembling as she yanked open the heavy rear door of the waiting black Escalade. She threw her briefcase onto the leather seat and slid in, sliding all the way to the opposite window. Marcus got in a second later. He didn't crowd her. He took his seat on the far side, pulling his phone from his jacket pocket. The Escalade peeled out of the garage, plunging them back into the glaring, neon-lit heat of the strip. You are irrational, Clara finally whispered, staring blindly out the tinted window. Her hands were gripped so tightly in her lap her knuckles ached. You are a CEO. You calculate risk. Walking away from $2 billion because of a bruised ego, it goes against everything you are. It has nothing to do with my ego, Marcus replied smoothly. The lethal composure was already sliding back into place, sealing the cracks he had just exposed in the elevator. Then what is it? Clara snapped, whipping her head around to glare at him. You just gave Chloe Dean the ammunition to destroy you. She is going to call the board of Sterling and Vance. She is going to tell the senior partners that their new CEO blew a historic acquisition to protect a junior partner. They will vote no confidence. They will strip you of your title by Friday. Marcus locked his phone and slowly turned his head to look at her. Let them try. You are going to lose the firm, Marcus. Then I lose the firm, Marcus stated, his voice dropping into a dark, terrifying calm. I have enough liquid capital to buy 3 more just like it. Sterling and Vance was merely the vehicle I needed to get you back in my airspace. If it burns to the ground today, it has already served its purpose. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, horrified and entirely captivated by the sheer, destructive magnitude of his obsession. He wasn't playing a corporate game. He was playing a war of attrition, and she was the only prize on the board. The Escalade pulled up to the grand entrance of the Neon Mirage. Clara practically threw herself out of the vehicle before the valet could open the door. She marched through the opulent, gold-plated lobby, entirely ignoring the flashing slot machines and the aggressive chime of the casino floor. She needed the isolation of the penthouse. She needed to draft a resignation letter. She needed to run. She swiped her keycard and pushed into the Emperor's suite. Marcus was right behind her. As soon as the heavy mahogany doors clicked shut, Clara spun around. I am leaving, Clara announced, her voice shaking but resolute. I am packing my bag and I am getting on a plane to New York. If you try to enforce the non-compete clause, I will drag you into open court and testify that you engaged in predatory workplace harassment. Marcus didn't flinch. He slowly unbuttoned his suit jacket, tossing it onto the plush leather sofa. You won't testify to anything, Clara. Because by the time your plane lands in New York, the press will already have the story. Clara froze. What press? Marcus walked to the marble wet bar. He didn't pour a drink. He picked up the remote control and aimed it at the massive flat-screen television mounted above the modern fireplace. The screen flickered to life, tuned directly to a prominent financial news network. The banner at the bottom of the screen read in bold, flashing letters, Sterling and Vance CEO blows $2 billion Dean merger over alleged affair with subordinate. The floor dropped out from beneath Clara's feet. Chloe didn't just call the board, Marcus said softly, his eyes fixed on the screen as the anchors debated his sanity. She called the Wall Street Journal. She leaked that I walked away from the deal because I am carrying on an inappropriate, illicit affair with my lead counsel. Clara's vision blurred. Her flawless, untouchable reputation, 3 years of 80-hour weeks, the missed holidays, the relentless grind to prove she was a machine, was being incinerated on national television. She wasn't Clara Scoth, the brilliant litigator anymore. She was just the subordinate sleeping with the boss. My career. Clara whispered, the reality crashing down on her. You let her destroy my career. Marcus finally turned to look at her. The dark, possessive heat in his eyes was absolute. No, Marcus corrected, taking a slow step toward her. Chloe attempted to destroy Clara Scoth's career. But Clara Scoth doesn't exist. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded piece of heavy cream paper. The gold foil seal of Clark County, Nevada glinted in the penthouse lighting. The board is convening an emergency vote in 1 hour to strip me of my company, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a harsh, commanding timbre. They think I am an erratic CEO sleeping with an employee. But the bylaws of Sterling and Vance strictly prohibit the termination of a CEO for actions taken to protect a legal spouse. Clara stared at the marriage certificate in his hand, her heart hammering a frantic, terrifying rhythm against her ribs. What are you saying? She breathed. Marcus stepped into her space, his towering frame casting a shadow over her. He reached out, his thumb gently tracing the trembling line of her jaw. I am saying, wife, Marcus murmured, his eyes burning into hers, that it is time to do some damage control. Put your armor back on. We have a press conference in 30 minutes, and you are going to stand beside me and tell the world exactly who you belong to. And that's the end of episode 10. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments below. Your feedback helps us know you're watching and encourages us to keep bringing you more content. See you in the next episode.